One of my guests is here right now, a favorite of mine, Dr. Jeff Rich. How you doing, Jeff? You doing okay
I'm
today?
I'm very well, Jamal. Yourself?
I
What a
am doing all
star-packed show you have tonight.
Yeah. It's a big show. I was trying to make up for not being here on Thursday. And so I was trying to effectively pack everybody in so I can still get the full week of guests. But that means I'm going to be up until like 12:30. So it will be a late night. Um, And just for the audience, Dr. Jeff Rich. Dr. Jeff Rich, he's a historian, author, retired government official in Melbourne, Australia, with a PhD in history and over 3 decades of experience in government. He created the Burning Archive YouTube channel and Substack, where he shares commentary, book reviews, interviews on world history, culture, and politics. He's written a book, 13 Ways of Looking at a Bureaucrat. Now, you guys may hear a lot of rain here because it's pouring down here, and it's thundering and lightning. So forgive me if there are flashes and stuff like that. Jeff, speaking of 13 ways of looking at a bureaucrat, I am very curious on your take about something. It's something that you hit on your channel, and I don't have an answer for it. You did a commentary on it, and so I thought I would get your take on it. I want to
Mhm.
give just a bit of context, just for the audience, though. This was, I believe, this was Sky News, if I'm not mistaken. Listen to, yeah, okay, good. So this is the U.S. State Department, former U.S. State Department advisor. He was on Australian Sky News.
Ukraine
This shocked me because I can't believe that this was actually played on air.
indefinitely.
In fact, the opposite is true. My sources tell me that the ratio of Ukrainian to Russian dead is 36-1. So it's the Ukrainians who are approaching 1 million or so casualties. The numbers that people are told by the mainstream media in the United States, particularly the New York Times and the Washington Post, bear about as much resemblance to reality as the numbers that the government told Americans what was going on in the Vietnam War. So the war of attrition that Russia did begin in 2022, it has been largely successful.
That is not a point of view that is typically shared on mainstream media, which is why I'm shocked that they played that on air and that they put that gentleman on and maybe they didn't know what he was going to say.
Especially the Murdoch-controlled mainstream media.
Yes.
Sky News is Murdoch. It's a very
Yes.
people talk about Sky News after dark in Australia.
Is that what they call it? Sky News After Dark?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. You did a
So
piece.
he seems to be a bit of a whistleblower. I've not heard him before, but that's quite a startling revelation. I mean, I don't know what his role or level of status in the State Department is, whether he's affiliated with the sort of Trumpists or other. But that is not even what the White House has been saying in recent times. Really, is it?
No, this is James Corden, former U.S. State Department advisor on Russia. I guess the reason why I'm showing that, and the reason why I'm asking this question in this way, you made the point of saying, basically, the way of trying to end this war. Like, is there, what would diplomats seeking a peace in this war even look like? And I guess my thing is, how would you do that? How would a bureaucrat go about seeking peace in a conflict like this when all of these different sides are pulling in particular directions? Nobody is really being honest about it. This guy is finally coming out saying the honest truth. But if you notice the way the question was asked, he had to effectively say, dude, you're getting this so wrong. And then kind of explain reality to him. How would a diplomat go about trying to get this settled, especially considering how do you trust the U.S. in this process?
Well, that is definitely a barrier, isn't it? And the Russians have said this over time about whether the United States is agreement capable.
Yeah.
But the tenor of the video I put out was really to say you've got to go through a bit of a process from moving from active conflict to kind of bring down the temperature a bit and explore what the other party's needs are in order to have some reasonable, just settlement that meets the needs of all the parties to the conflict, and explores genuine options that addresses the root causes of the conflict as they are perceived by the different parties. And part of the issue that bureaucrats need to do is they need to take off their sort of partisan nationalist sort of hat and say, well, how does someone else look at this issue? So, if I were a US State Department official, I'd be asking, well, how do the Russians see this issue? What sorts of things can we do that would actually genuinely respond to the root causes? But I guess I'd also be asking that of the Ukrainians, the Europeans, and also the British, because I guess what I perceive one of the barriers being in terms of developing a genuine peace agreement at the moment is, well, effectively the United States is trying unilaterally to sort of, make a peace deal, have a grand announcement like the Gaza peace deal at a Budapest summit or something like that. But it's not really fully engaging, although it's a little bit ambiguous, the extent to which it's fully engaging with what the Russian needs are. The Russians are saying that there was some proposal put by Stephen Witkoff that seemed to acknowledge the root causes of the conflict and was a basis from which to work. And they're saying that at the Alaska summit, Vladimir Putin actually put a formal response to that. And they're sort of waiting for a US response. In the last day or two, there's been some sort of discussion about a sort of a document which is described as I think the term is a no paper, which is a sort of, let's just write it down without any official letterhead, like a working draft, something none of us are committed to, but let's just create a few options to discuss this. So there do seem to be signs that there are genuine exchanges of potential options between the United States and Russia at the moment. But I think ultimately they're also going to have to involve Europe, and they'll also have to involve Ukraine. It may just be a question of timing about when those states are kind of ready to genuinely engage. But I think that's what needs to happen. There needs to be open exploration of the actual real needs and a move towards conflict mitigation, towards generation of genuine peace options, and real negotiation, which people don't just sort of flip-flop day to day on, but actually commit to. And I think that's part of the dilemma the United States is in, because ever since February this year, when the first rapprochement happened and Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov met in Saudi Arabia, there's been some basic steps requested by Russia for the US to sort of demonstrate that it really does have the intent and does have the capability to actually not just escalate, not just threaten, but actually move towards peace, to re-establish, normal diplomatic relations, to do, a range of, really quite basic and minor practical things. And there's only been very, very slow progress on that. But there also does seem to be some sort of open exchange. None of us really know what it is. But if the foreign minister of Russia, the president of Russia are both saying that there is a concept that they've spoken about and they've talked about, which is of more substance than anything else that has been discussed so far. I guess that is progress, but it's limited progress, and I think it's held back, I think, by the way in which the United States has got so used to being, making its will immediately the way of the world, Donald Trump says something and it becomes the reality,
Right.
that they're getting frustrated. The United States is getting frustrated with the fact that, I mean, you mean I've got to work through all this detail about, where the borders are?
Right. Right.
It's not my country.
Yeah. Jeff,
So, yeah.
I appreciate that. In a world where people were honest, pragmatic, practical, looking for actual outcomes, then that would be perfectly okay. That is not the way our world works. And the reason I say that
I totally acknowledge that, and I guess, but I think that you got to believe that there are at least some people out there who do actually want to work in that way, and that at some point the situation is going to get to, a recognition of the kind of realities that ex-State Department official was talking about, that people will be driven to actually sort of negotiate in a different way. But, I also very much see the US being a little bit trapped, really, because they're sort of, they want to end the war. They can't end the war unilaterally. They keep trying to end the war, but then they can't actually get their allies on side. And the allies keep pushing them to escalate the war because that's the only way in which those allies can get the US to sort of take their interests into account. Some of those interests are really quite venal, like the current Ukrainian regime. And, I don't know if the current Ukrainian sort of regime is really going to be an effective negotiation party at any point in these negotiations. That regime might need to change before any sensible peace process can really sort of go forward.
Yeah, I don't think, for one, I don't think Europe wants to end the war. I don't think the Ukrainian government that's in power can end the war. I think Zelensky knows that basically the Nazi regime, the Banderites, they're done. If they have to cede territory, Zelensky knows his life will be at stake if he signs anything that says I'm ceding territory or effectively a surrender document. Europe, I think, strongly wants to keep the United States engaged because in their mind, well, this keeps the US and NATO, this keeps the US engaged. Hell, it may even be more cynical than that in the sense of, well, we need Ukraine to keep dying to give us time, almost like a military maneuver. But we need you to die for us as we get prepared to maybe fight ourselves. I don't know what Trump wants. I think Trump wants to end it on American terms, which is nonsense when you've effectively lost the war. So it's like Russia has given the exact same demands from the very beginning, and they have escalated the demands in the context of, okay, well, we are now standing on these additional territories. So these are part of the Russian Federation. So are you going to accept it? Yay or nay? And when they say nay, they keep going. So if you're the Russians, from your point of view, why would you deviate from your demands when it is obvious you're winning and you're going to take Donbass either way? Meaning whether we get it on the negotiating table or whether we take it in 6 months, we're going to take Donbass, and we're probably even going to go and get Odessa. So it's like we're giving you the opportunity to come to terms with the fact that you've lost this. I don't think Europe can do it. And I don't think a hegemon that still has this kind of level of hubris that is built into Donald Trump can accept those terms. So it's like, I accept what you're saying. There are honest actors out there that want this war to end. I'm one of them. I'm just not in the negotiations. You have a bunch of cynical people with, let's say, objectives that run contrary. And let's be also honest. Europe doesn't care about Ukrainians any more than the US cares about Ukrainians. So it's like, it's not like Europeans are dying. Well, they are, but not in this mass scale. And it's not like Americans are dying. It's, well, somebody else is dying. So, the fervor that may be there doesn't exist. I give you one example, and I'll bring in Crinky. This is this British-led plan. They got all of these Ukrainians killed in a dumb mission that the Brits ultimately didn't care about because they weren't Brits carrying out the mission, or this combined arms warfare that they talk about, which doesn't apply in modern warfare. Like, they don't care. The feedback mechanism that would typically be there from a state being at war and people dying in that state doesn't exist. These are just Ukrainians. So what if they die? That seems to be the issue that is also built into this. Give me a take on that. I mean, am I being too cynical in the way that I'm looking at this?
Look, not necessarily. I mean, I think the British are a particularly noxious actor. I can't quite think of what the right word is. Perfidious Albion in this process. And they, I mean, I feel they have more interests in the survival of the sort of, anti-Russian Ukrainian project than anyone really, more so than Europe. I mean, it's their sort of their military presence, their intelligence military presence in Eastern Europe. Really, I think there's an awful lot of operations and prestige and other sorts of things vested by the British in this Ukrainian operation. So I tend to think of them as a little bit separate from the European Union.
I see.
There are people who, and I think, I think, someone should just tell the British to get the hell out of Europe and, never come back. But, I'm an Australian, so, and the European Union's complex because there's the range of views. You have the extreme Russophobes. There are people who seem to think that Europe might be planning a war against Russia. I find that really hard to believe in any. I mean, there might be some ideological zealots, but I really find it hard to believe that that is a serious proposition. I have read in some of the Ukrainian media a view that Russia is doing okay economically now, but if the war continues for 2 to 3 more years, then it will crumble, kind of thing. So there might be a view amongst some of the Europeans that if they can hang in there for 2 to 3 years, they will get the prize of both Russian assets plus Ukraine. That was sort of like an economic war of attrition, if you like. So that is feasible, and that could be the case. But I just can't really see the European countries as seriously wanting to escalate the military conflict because the risks are so high. On the other hand, what will Europe do if the Ukrainian government collapses in some way or the military collapses, say, within the next 6 months? The US presumably won't come in, although there'll be a lot of moral pressure on them. They will almost certainly enter into the conflict. So I think there probably are contingency plans for that kind of thing. And then you get into the question of, well, where are the borders? What's the new Ukraine? What are the circumstances? And I think in some ways it's in no one's interest that there be a rapid collapse. It's not in Russia's interest. It's certainly not in Ukraine's interest. It's not in Europe's interest. It's not in the American cynical political interest to see the Trump government's political interest to see a rapid collapse of Ukraine either, because however much they fudge it, they will be blamed.
Yes.
But, it will create a really disastrous humanitarian situation, and it will create, a very volatile situation with, as you say, the sort of right-wing extremists within the current government who could do anything, and, a lot of resentment and all that sort of thing. So that's why I feel it's quite a volatile situation with a lot of differing views that will partly be contingent, will adapt to sort of circumstances. if you like. Yeah, that's
The
sort of
thing is,
where I see it.
Trump can always walk. I mean, I know some people are like, well, he can't. Trump could walk. I mean, also, what's wild about it too, we have Donald Trump with him effectively bought out the Budapest summit after what the 2.5 hour conversation with Putin. Lavrov and Rubio talks, and then all of a sudden it's thrown into question because the U.S. seems shocked that the Russian perspective hasn't changed, and it's like, why are you shocked? Like, it's amazing. Like, they seem to be so out of touch with reality. From the Russian point of view, this is existential, meaning it doesn't matter what you do. If you want to put in Tomahawks, if you want to add in M16s, if you want to add whatever you add, or F-16s, whatever you add, we are going to continue. And if you don't accept terms, then we will continue. Now, maybe what Europe thinks is, well, this overextends Russia. If Russia has to, pull up 3 million men to occupy the entirety of Ukraine, well, that bogs them down for anything else that they may have to do, not to mention reconstruction and everything else. It's hard to know what's going on in the Europeans' heads, per se, because they seem to be completely delusional. You mentioned this notion of the Russian economy collapsing. The European economy is collapsing around them. I mean, look at Germany. Have you seen the report for Germany recently where they were talking about the auto jobs that have been lost? What is it? Lufthansa has been cutting the number of flights because they can't necessarily afford to keep the airlines going. Hundreds of thousands of jobs have been lost. That's just Germany. France, the government can't even keep afloat because of the economic morass that they're in. Britain, same thing. Meaning these deeply unpopular leaders of these countries that seem to be burning down around them, if their assessment is, well, Russia, if we give them 2 years, they'll run into trouble. It's like, okay, dude, you're in trouble now.
I mean, it's not a view that I hold. I'm just saying that there are people within Ukraine who seem to have that view. So, and I'm not so pessimistic about the European economy. I think it's a lot more resilient and robust than maybe some of you might like to present it.
Okay.
But I mean, it's a big economy. It's got lots of issues. The reason Thomas Carlyle called economics the dismal science is there's always economic issues. Yeah. But I mean, one big issue though is the war debt. Like, the Ukraine has incurred enormous debts in prosecuting this war. And when you say the US can walk, yes, it can walk, but there's, I think they're talking about like 140 billion euro that Europe needs to sort of fess up to over the next 12 months or so, or else literally Ukraine will actually, I mean, if you want to talk about an economic collapse, that will be an economic collapse. It will be a catastrophe. It will be like Germany in the early 1920s type economic collapse.
There lies the rub, Jeff. That's why they're going to steal the Russian money. They're going to take that
money.
Well,
and that's what the whole repatriation kind of thing is. But whether, I guess it's the question of, when and how that is done. And there's an increasing view within Ukraine too that Europe, may not be able to come up with this level of money. And part of the tension between Europe and the United States, part of the dance that they're doing about them also is, well, really, United States, you started this war, you led this war, you urged us to partake in this war, you equipped us and armed us to fight this war, and now you just want to walk out and get us to pay you for the privilege? Seriously?
We're done. I was like, that's Joe Biden's war. Joe Biden should pay for it.
Joe Biden's war, yeah, sure.
Yep.
I think there is an element of you broke it, you fix it principle sort of really that needs to perhaps apply to the United States actions, and as probably part of the sort of back scenes discussion. It's not really the kind of thing that gets played out in the public sort of scene. So I think there are all these tensions. It's interesting too that Orban may play some sort of role in a subsequent meeting. I mean, there's obviously a bit of water to go under the bridge before this event really happens.
Do you think it's going to happen? I've heard Alexander McCurris was making the point of saying this event will completely happen. Don't believe any of the nonsense about this meeting is off and everything else. And even Trump was like, well, give me a couple of days and I'll let you know.
Oh, well, I mean, Trump doesn't know what he's talking about, really, I think. But the statement from the Russian spokesperson, I'm just quickly checking the Russian Kremlin thing here. It says that they discussed, I'm just trying to find it. They discussed the... oh, yeah, here we go. It was agreed the representatives of both countries would immediately begin preparations for the summit, and they didn't agree the possibility of holding another personal meeting. The representatives would begin preparations for the summit, so there's a plan for a plan, which could potentially be organised in Budapest, for instance. So, Rubio and Lavrov had a telephone conversation, which was about implementing understandings,
right?
And there's all this silly media nonsense about whether or not it's been postponed, that kind of thing. To organise a summit like that, you need to have there needs to be serious work done into it. And clearly, I don't think there was really a lot of serious work really done for the Alaska summit. I think the serious work was the Russian response to whatever the Witkoff proposal is. I suspect the Russians got there. And like I've seen ministers, heads of government type meetings proceed in this way. The leaders quite like to have the ceremonial grandeur of everyone preparing the wonderful lunch and the big meeting, and they get there and they say, "Oh, look, we can do this in 20 minutes, can't we, Joe? Why don't we do that and head off early?" It's sort of a lot of these people.
So you've seen that happen before, where they're like, "Dude, we don't need to
totally."
Be here for okay.
And often, diplomats, junior officials, all that sort of stuff, they put their life's work into organising the lunch and the various agenda papers, but it's not really what the leaders are so focused on. And the actual business the real leaders really need to focus on is something much more a smaller or more concrete or more specific. So I suspect the Alaska thing was Putin saying, well, your concept has some legs, but you need to adapt it in a certain way.
Agreed.
And Trump basically listening for once in his life, perhaps.
Well, and not coming back
to whatever Putin said,
which is the Russian point of view. It's like, okay, we never got a response, and my thing is, you kind of did get a response. I mean, they increased this oil war. Well, they were working with Ukraine to effectively destroy the oil industry to kind of for some level of leverage. Obviously, Trump's issue is I want to deal with this from a position of strength because I'm a hegemon and I'm a king. Yeah. And the Russian position is, dude, you have no cards, and nothing that you do is going to change. This inexorable process that's happening. Yeah. Either you come to a deal or you don't. No, it's fascinating. Jeff, thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. Is it raining there? I'm curious. I mean, you're only a couple of hours away.
We've had like really wild, stormy, windy weather in Melbourne today, really. So I don't think it's raining at the moment, but it's been kind of quite wild and stormy.
Yeah,
so.
We're under the same sky. For some reason, I'm always enamored by that. It's like we're under the same sky. Jeff, thank you for this, man. Really good breakdown. I am always fascinated. Look, there are some people who I bring on who've been in government and many people who've been outside of government, meaning these are two very different points of view. And the people who are in government usually have a certain, let's say, way of looking at this that is very different than people who are just looking at the plane from above, which is why I'm always interested in bringing in people who are either in the military or, for that matter, in the government process where they could give me, okay, how does this look from inside? as opposed to what we're just seeing on the outside. I always appreciate this. Thank you for this.
Thank you,
And just
Jamal.
so the audience will know, the Burning Archive, I keep saying it is a fantastic channel. Definitely check Jeff out. Dr. Jeff Rich, historian, author, retired government official from Melbourne, Australia, with a PhD in history and over 3 decades of experience in government. He created the Burning Archive YouTube channel and Substack, where he shares commentaries, book reviews, interviews, and world history, culture, and politics. Jeff, you're going to have to bring me in for one of those book reviews. I am super interested in geeking out with you on this stuff. He has written books including 13 Ways of Looking at a Bureaucrat. Jeff, you have a fantastic rest of your night, man. Thank you for this.
Okay, ciao. Enjoy the show, Jamal.
Bye-bye.